Your life may not feel heavy because of one major problem. It may feel heavy because of 20 small things that never quite get finished. You wake up and reach for your phone before your eyes have adjusted to the morning light. A glass still sits beside the bed. Yesterday's clothes are on the chair. A bag is lying in the doorway. The kitchen sink looks almost clean, but never completely clean. And when the day ends, your work notebook is still visible from the bed. None of these things is serious. That is exactly why they are so easy to ignore, but your mind still registers them. The glass, the clothes, the bag, the unfinished sink, the notebook waiting in the corner. Each one becomes a tiny reminder that something has been left open. One reminder will not ruin your day, but dozens of them, repeated every morning and evening, create invisible friction. You may not notice it consciously, but you feel it as mental noise, low-level tension, decision fatigue, and the strange sense that ordinary life requires more effort than it should. That is what this video is really about. Not becoming more disciplined, not building a perfect morning routine, and not adding 15 more responsibilities to a life that already feels full. It is about removing the small points of friction that quietly drain your attention before the important parts of the day have even begun. The 15 ideas you are about to hear are inspired by Japanese ways of organizing space, respecting ordinary routines, and creating clear transitions between one part of life and the next. Not every Japanese household follows all of them, and they are not rigid rules. They are simply useful ways of preventing small disorder from becoming a larger burden and leaving a room, a meal, a morning, or an entire day slightly more ready for what comes next. Some of these ideas may seem almost too small to matter. But small actions become powerful when they are repeated in the places you use every day. Pay close attention to number 7, because it changes the few areas of your home your eyes return to again and again without you realizing it. And stay until number 15, because that is where all of these ideas come together in one simple 60-second reset. Not a complete life overhaul, not a weekend cleaning project. Just 1 minute that can stop today's small disorder from following you into tomorrow. Let's begin with the first invisible loop most people leave open every day. Let's begin with one of the simplest ideas in Japanese home life, one that looks almost too small to matter. You've probably heard the 2-minute rule before. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Good advice. But the Japanese way of thinking takes that idea one step further. Instead of applying it only to tasks, apply it to the space around you. If you notice a cup that belongs in the kitchen, take it with you. If a towel has fallen on the floor, hang it back up. If a counter needs one quick wipe, do it before you walk away. If something belongs on a shelf, return it now instead of promising yourself you'll do it later. None of these actions takes much time, but together, they prevent something far more exhausting than clutter. They prevent unfinished moments. Psychologists describe this as the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds tend to keep unfinished tasks active long after we've stopped thinking about them on purpose. A single cup on the table isn't stressful. An unopened letter isn't stressful. A pair of shoes by the door isn't stressful. But when every room contains small reminders of things left undone, your brain quietly keeps track of all of them. The problem is rarely one object. The problem is a room full of unfinished decisions. That constant background noise slowly steals attention you never meant to give away. Now, there's one important balance here. This doesn't mean you should stop every few minutes while you're trying to focus on meaningful work. If you're writing, reading, solving a difficult problem, or having an important conversation, stay with it. The goal isn't to interrupt deep work every time you notice something out of place. The better time to use this habit is during the natural transitions that already happen throughout your day. When you leave a room, when you finish eating, when you arrive home, when you finish working, before you begin the next activity, close one small loop. Return it, wipe it, fold it, throw it away, or simply put it back where it belongs. These tiny actions don't make your home perfect. They keep small problems from growing into overwhelming ones, and over time, something surprising begins to happen. Your home asks fewer questions of you. Your mind makes fewer unnecessary decisions. Life feels just a little lighter, not because you became more productive, but because you stopped carrying unfinished moments from one part of the day into the next. That is the first source of invisible friction. The second begins before you've even fully opened your eyes in the morning. The second source of invisible friction begins before you've even fully opened your eyes. For many of us, the very first thing we do each morning is reach for our phone. Before we've noticed the weather, before we've taken a sip of water, before we've even reminded ourselves where we are. Within seconds, our minds are filled with emails, headlines, messages, and other people's priorities. The day hasn't really begun, yet we're already reacting instead of arriving. Many Japanese daily routines begin differently, not with urgency, not with stimulation, but with quiet awareness of the world that already exists around you. The first few minutes of the morning don't have to be productive. They just have to belong to you. If you can, step outside before you look at your phone. You don't need to go for a long walk. Simply stand at an open doorway, step onto a balcony, or sit beside a window where real morning light can reach your eyes. Notice whether the air feels cool or warm. Look at the sky, pay attention to the season. Listen for birds, wind, or the sounds of a neighborhood slowly waking up. Let your body experience the morning before your mind enters the digital world, because your phone tells you what the world wants from you. Morning light tells your body where it is. Then, before coffee, drink a glass of water. Not because warm water is some magical health secret. The temperature matters far less than the sequence. After 7 or 8 hours without drinking anything, your body is asking for hydration. Coffee can wait a little longer. Think of it this way. You're giving your body something it genuinely needs before giving your brain something it simply wants. That small change creates a calmer beginning to the day. If waiting an hour for coffee isn't realistic, don't worry. This isn't about perfection. Even 5 or 10 extra minutes can make a difference. Tomorrow morning, try a simple experiment. Leave your phone untouched for the first 5 minutes. Step into natural daylight. Drink 1 glass of water. Then enjoy your coffee. Not because someone told you that's the right way to live, but because you've given your body the chance to wake up before asking it to perform. It is a small beginning, but small beginnings, repeated every morning, quietly shape the kind of days and eventually the kind of life you live. By now, you may have noticed a pattern. None of these ideas asks you to work harder. They ask you to stop working against yourself. One of the biggest differences in the Japanese approach to daily life is the respect for rhythm. There is a time to begin, a time to pause, a time to eat, a time to rest, and a time to let the day come to an end. Many of us have learned to see fatigue as a problem to overcome. When we feel tired, we drink another cup of coffee. When we lose focus, we push a little harder. When we get hungry late at night, we eat whatever is convenient and head straight to bed. But your body isn't failing you. Most of the time, it's simply asking for a different rhythm. One simple place to begin is dinner. When your schedule allows, try to finish your largest evening meal 2 or 3 hours before you go to sleep. This isn't about eating less, and it certainly isn't about following one perfect dinner time. Life is different for everyone. Some people work late. Some work night shifts. Some live with health conditions that require a completely different routine. The goal isn't to force your life into someone else's schedule. It's simply to give your body enough space to finish one job before asking it to begin another. The same idea applies during the middle of the day. Many people think resting means they've lost momentum. In reality, a short pause often protects the momentum they still have. A few quiet minutes won't replace a good night's sleep, but they may stop temporary tiredness from becoming an entire afternoon of poor decisions, impatience, and mental fog. And resting doesn't have to look the same every day. If all you have is 2 minutes, close your eyes, put your phone away, and simply breathe. If you have 10 minutes, sit quietly or lie down without reading, scrolling, or listening to anything. And if you have 20 minutes, let yourself take a brief, restorative break, but stop before it turns into a long, late afternoon nap that leaves you feeling even more tired. Rest is not always what you do after everything is finished. Sometimes it is what allows you to finish well. The more you pay attention to your body's natural rhythm, instead of constantly fighting it, the less energy you waste simply trying to feel normal. And that brings us to another quiet transition the Japanese have practiced for generations. Not before work, not before sleep, but before something we all do every single day: eating. There is one quiet moment in Japanese daily life that many people outside Japan never think about. It lasts only a few seconds, yet it has the power to change not only the way you eat, but the way you move through your entire day. Before a meal, many people in Japan say a simple word, itadakimasu. It's often translated as, "I humbly receive," but the meaning goes much deeper than those 3 words. It is a quiet acknowledgement that this meal did not appear on the table by accident. It recognizes the food itself, the life and natural resources that made it possible, the farmer who grew it, the people who harvested it, transported it, prepared it, and served it. And perhaps most importantly, it recognizes that at this moment you have enough food, enough time to stop, enough nourishment to continue your day. Whether you choose to say itadakimasu or simply pause in your own way isn't really the point. The real practice is creating a small boundary between doing and receiving. Most of us don't eat anymore. We answer emails while eating, we scroll through our phones while eating, we watch television while eating. Our bodies may be sitting at the table, but our attention has already moved somewhere else. The Japanese pause gently interrupts that habit. It gives the nervous system a moment to shift, from rushing to receiving, from producing to being nourished. The pause is not only about eating less, it is about refusing to treat nourishment as another task to rush through. So before your first bite today, try something very simple. Put your phone down. Really look at the food in front of you. Take one slow breath. Then think of just one person or one process that helped make this meal possible. Maybe it was the person who cooked it. Maybe it was the truck driver who delivered it. Maybe it was someone you've never met. That single breath changes more than you might expect, because every pause trains the mind for the next one. The pause before eating becomes practice for pausing before replying to a difficult message, pausing before buying something you don't really need, pausing before reacting in frustration, pausing before rushing into the next task simply because it is waiting. One quiet breath before a meal becomes one quiet habit for the rest of your life. And surprisingly, some of the most meaningful changes in a home begin not with what you add, but with what you choose to notice. There is one part of the home that quietly shapes how the entire house feels. Most people never think much about it. The Japanese do. It's called mizumawari, the spaces around water, the kitchen sink, the bathroom counter, the faucet, the shower. They're some of the smallest areas in a home, yet they're also the places you return to over and over again every single day. That is exactly why they matter. Not because they're magically more important than any other room, but because your eyes visit them dozens of times without you even realizing it. These are the places that collect water, soap, toothpaste, fingerprints, and small signs of yesterday faster than almost anywhere else. A few drops of water, a used sponge, a bottle left out, a toothpaste cap sitting on the counter. None of those things is a problem by itself, but together, they quietly change the feeling of the room. One thing I've noticed over the years is that a clean home isn't only about what gets cleaned, it's about what gets finished. When you wash your hands, is that moment actually complete? Or does it leave behind another tiny reminder waiting for your attention? That's why many Japanese households develop a simple habit. After using a space around water, take just a few extra seconds. Rinse away any visible residue. Wipe away standing water. Return bottles or products to where they belong. Then, leave the surface as open and clear as possible. That's it. No complicated cleaning routine, no expensive products. Just a quiet reset before you move on. A dry sink does not mean your life is perfect. It simply tells the mind that the last activity has ended and the space is ready again. Those small signals matter more than most people realize, because every completed space asks a little less of your attention the next time you walk past it. And after enough days, the home begins to feel calmer, not because it is spotless, but because fewer unfinished moments are waiting for you. Of course, a clean counter is only part of the story. A home can look beautiful and still feel heavy if the air inside it never has the chance to breathe. Let's talk about that next. A clean home doesn't only depend on what you can see. Sometimes it depends on what you can't. Fresh air. One habit that's deeply woven into everyday life in Japan is paying attention to the air inside the home. Not because fresh air is a trend, but because a home, much like the people living inside it, needs regular moments of exchange with the outside world. After a long night, moisture builds up. The air becomes still, cooking smells linger, windows collect condensation. Even when a room looks perfectly clean, it may not feel fresh. Whenever the weather and outdoor conditions allow, open a window for a few minutes. Let yesterday's air leave. If opening a window isn't practical, use an exhaust fan or a mechanical ventilation system instead. The goal isn't to follow one rigid rule. It's simply to avoid trapping stale air inside the place where you spend most of your life. Of course, there are days when keeping the windows closed makes more sense. Heavy pollution, wildfire smoke, severe storms, or seasons when pollen makes life miserable. Good habits should work with reality, not against it. Interestingly, the same principle applies to us. Just as a home occasionally needs fresh air, we need fresh space. One Japanese practice that beautifully reflects this idea is Shinrin-yoku, often translated as forest bathing. It doesn't mean hiking for miles or exercising until you're exhausted. It means slowing down enough to simply be present in a natural place. Most of us don't have a forest just outside the front door, and that's okay. A quiet park, a garden, a tree-lined street, even sitting beneath a single tree can offer a small version of the same experience. The important part isn't the location, it's the absence of purpose. Tomorrow, give yourself 15 minutes outside. No earbuds, no podcast, no taking photos, no counting steps, no destination, no turning it into another self-improvement project. Just walk, or sit, or simply notice. Notice the breeze. Notice the light changing. Notice the sound of leaves moving. Notice that the world continues perfectly well without demanding anything from you for a few minutes. Not every peaceful moment needs to become useful. That may be one of the hardest lessons for modern life. We've become so accustomed to measuring everything: our productivity, our exercise, our sleep, even our relaxation, that we sometimes forget rest has value simply because it is rest. This small practice protects one part of your day from being measured. It reminds you that not every minute has to earn its worth. Sometimes, simply breathing fresh air is enough, and once the home feels lighter and your mind feels lighter, you begin to notice something else. The space where you sleep may be carrying far more of your day than you ever intended. Let's change that next. One of the quietest changes you can make has nothing to do with sleeping longer. It has to do with helping your brain understand that the workday is actually over. For many of us, work no longer stays at the office. It follows us into the living room, onto the kitchen table, and eventually, right beside the bed, the laptop is still open. The notebook is waiting on the nightstand. The phone that handled meetings all day is now charging within arm's reach. Then we wonder why it's so hard to truly relax. Our bodies may be lying down, but our surroundings are still whispering, "You're not finished yet." One lesson we can learn from Japanese homes isn't that everyone has a separate office or even a separate bedroom. In fact, many homes in Japan are quite small, and one room often serves several purposes throughout the day. The lesson is something much simpler. Create a visible transition. Traditionally, many Japanese families lay out a futon at night and fold it away again in the morning. The futon itself isn't the important part. The ritual is. One space becomes something different because a clear action signals that the day has changed. You can create that same feeling, no matter where you live. At the end of your workday, close your laptop completely. Don't leave it sitting open just in case. Put your notebook inside a drawer, a cabinet, or even a bag. Move your phone away from your pillow if you can. Dim the lights a little, straighten the blanket, fluff the pillow. Do one small thing that tells both your eyes and your mind. This room is no longer for working. When you cannot create a separate room, create a separate state. That one idea changes everything because your brain pays attention to visual signals long before you consciously think about them. Every object left in view quietly reminds you of unfinished responsibilities. Every object put away quietly gives you permission to let them rest until tomorrow. The goal isn't to pretend work doesn't exist. The goal is to stop carrying today's work into tonight's rest. When your room changes, your mind finds it easier to change with it. And once your evenings begin to feel calmer, something else becomes much easier to notice. Not the things you need to do, but the things you no longer need to keep. By now, you may have noticed that none of these ideas is really about having a perfect home. They're about creating a home that quietly supports the person you are today. Because sometimes, the hardest thing to let go of isn't an object. It's the version of ourselves attached to it. A suit from a job we left years ago, clothes waiting for a body we're hoping to have someday, kitchen gadgets we thought would change our habits, boxes filled with hobbies we never returned to. There's nothing wrong with keeping meaningful things. The question is why we're keeping them. One helpful way to think about it is to divide what you own into 3 simple categories. First, the things that truly support your life as it is today. Second, the things that carry genuine emotional or practical value. And third, the things you keep because of guilt, because of fantasy, or because letting go somehow feels like admitting a dream has changed. Not everything unused needs to disappear. Some things deserve to stay, but everything deserves an honest reason. The goal is not to erase your past. It is to stop making your past the first judge you meet every morning. The same idea applies to every object in your home. In many Japanese homes, organization isn't only about neatness. It's about making daily life require fewer unnecessary decisions. Every object should have a place that makes sense, close to where it's actually used, easy to reach, easy to put back, visible or clearly labeled when necessary, and not buried behind 5 other things that turn putting it away into another chore. Here's something interesting. If an object is always left out, the problem may not be your discipline. Its assigned home may simply be too inconvenient. Sometimes we blame ourselves, when we should really be redesigning the system. Owning fewer things follows the same philosophy, not because less is automatically better, and certainly not because you're supposed to live with almost nothing. Every possession quietly asks something from you. It asks for storage, cleaning, maintenance, attention, time, and every now and then, a decision. That's why many Japanese homes place such value on empty space. Not because empty space is something to fill later, but because it gives everything that remains the room to function well. If you're not sure where to begin, don't start with the whole house. Open one drawer, one shelf, or one small category. Then ask yourself 3 simple questions. Do I actually use this? Does it make my home easier or harder to live in? And if I were starting over today, would I choose to bring it into my home again? You don't have to answer perfectly. You just have to answer honestly. Because a home should reflect the life you're living now, not the life you feel guilty for leaving behind. And once your home begins supporting who you are today, you'll discover that ending the day well becomes much easier too. As we come to the end of these 15 ideas, you may notice something surprising. None of them is dramatic. None of them promises to transform your life overnight. And that's exactly the point. The Japanese approach to everyday living is rarely about one life-changing decision. It's about gently closing one small chapter before beginning the next. So I'd like to leave you with 2 simple practices you can do every evening. 1 for your mind, and 1 for your home. Before you go to bed tonight, take 1 minute and write just 3 sentences. One thing I noticed today, maybe it was the evening light through a window, a conversation that made you smile, or simply the fact that today felt a little quieter than yesterday. One thing that worked. It doesn't have to be a major accomplishment. Maybe you drank more water, maybe you stayed patient, maybe you finally did something you've been putting off. And finally, one thing I am willing to meet tomorrow. Not excited about, not ready to conquer, just willing to meet. Sometimes, that's more than enough. Those 3 sentences gently close the emotional side of your day. Then spend just 60 seconds closing the physical side. Wipe the counter. Put one object back where it belongs. Place your bag by the door. Prepare one small thing for tomorrow morning. The goal isn't to create a perfect house before bed. It's simply to leave tomorrow's version of yourself one less problem to solve. If there's one idea I hope stays with you after this video, it's this. A reset means closing one small loop before entering the next part of life. After eating, reset the sink. After working, put the laptop away. Before coffee, drink a glass of water. Before sleep, write your 3 sentences. Before entering the digital world, step into the morning light. You're not adding more tasks. You're creating clearer endings. And clearer endings often become calmer beginnings. A calmer life is rarely built through one dramatic decision. It is built by leaving each moment just a little more ready for the next. So here's my invitation. Don't try all 15 ideas. Choose just 3. one for your body, one for your home, and one for your mind. Live with those 3 for the next 7 days. Not perfectly, just consistently enough to notice what changes. Then come back and tell us what surprised you most. I genuinely love to hear your experience, and chances are someone reading your comment will need it too. Because a better life usually doesn't begin with one extraordinary moment. More often, it begins with one glass of water, one clear sink, one quiet breath, and one small moment that quietly says, "Today is complete." Thank you for spending this time with me. If even one of these ideas stays with you tomorrow morning, I'd love to have you back for the next journey. Until then, take good care of yourself and take good care of the place that quietly takes care of you.